How I fell in love with my life again after 70. I never planned on falling in love with my life again. In fact, if you had asked me a few years ago, I might have told you with a kind smile and tired eyes that most of the good parts were already behind me. Not in a bitter way, just honest. I had done my time in the sun. I had loved deeply, lost deeply, raised children, buried friends, learned the routines of quiet days and long sleepless nights. And somewhere along the line, without even noticing, I had settled into the quiet belief that joy, real, deep, soul-filling joy, was something that belonged to the younger version of me. The one who moved faster, dreamed bigger, and had time on her side. But something surprising happened in the stillness. It didn't come with fireworks or dramatic breakthroughs. No sudden trips around the world. No miracle changes to my health or bank account. Instead, it came slowly, almost shyly, like the morning sun warming up a cold room. One small moment at a time. A new routine here. A brave little decision there. The quiet bravery of not giving up on myself, even when I didn't quite recognize the person in the mirror. This isn't a story about turning back the clock. I haven't. I won't. It's not about pretending that aging doesn't change things. It does. In fact, it changes everything. But here's the beautiful part no one told me. Change doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes it means finally seeing what was always there waiting for me, beneath the noise of expectation and the rush of doing. This is the story of how I fell in love with my life again after 7-0. Not because it got easier, but because I finally stopped looking for more and started noticing what had been quietly asking for my attention all along. And if you're here, listening, watching, maybe some part of you is wondering if that kind of love is still possible. It is. I promise. Let me show you. For a long time, I wore my past self like a costume that didn't quite fit anymore. Not because I was ashamed of who I had become, but because I wasn't sure I was allowed to change. Was the mother who always had answers, the wife who kept things together, the friend who remembered every birthday, the woman who once juggled a job, a household, and the unpredictable beauty of everyday chaos. That was who I was, and I was proud of her. But slowly, as the years passed, I found myself trying to squeeze back into a role that no longer served me, one that required more energy than I had, more pretending than I could manage, and more denial than I wanted to carry. The truth is, aging strips you, not just of youth, but of illusions. Illusions about control, about permanence, about who you're supposed to be, and for a while, I fought it. I fought the changes in my body, the forgetfulness, the silence in the house, the way people started talking to me like I was fragile glass instead of flesh and fire. I tried to keep up, tried to dress like I used to, pretend I could do everything I once did, just as fast, just as well. But here's the turning point. I got tired of performing. There's a quiet grief in letting go of the person you used to be. But there's also a kind of freedom, like setting down a heavy bag you've been carrying across miles of memories. When I stopped chasing the woman in old photographs, I finally made room to see the woman standing in front of the mirror today. And she, this new version of me, isn't a lesser version. She's just honest, wiser, softer maybe, and finally, unafraid to just be. You don't have to be who you were to be whole. That's what I learned. The real love story began not when I reclaimed the past, but when I respected the present. There's a moment, often unspoken, but deeply felt, when you look around your life and realize the room is quieter than it used to be. Some of that quiet is welcome, especially after years of noise and responsibility, but some of it cuts. Like when no one calls all day, or when the only sound in the kitchen is the hum of the refrigerator and your own soft breath. I used to dread those moments, the ones where the silence got too loud, where being alone felt like a punishment, like proof that I was no longer needed or remembered. But here's what changed. I stopped treating solitude as something to fix. Instead of running from the quiet, I started sitting with it. I brewed my tea slowly, sat in the same spot by the window every morning and watched the sunrise. I listened to old music not as background noise, but as a memory being reawakened. I walked without headphones. I read books aloud just to hear a voice in the room. And slowly, the silence softened. It stopped sounding like absence and started sounding like space to breathe, to think, to feel, to reconnect with a part of myself that had been buried under years of caring for everyone else. There's a strange magic in solitude when you're not afraid of it. I found that my own company wasn't empty, it was sacred. There were stories in me I hadn't told, questions I hadn't asked myself, kindness I hadn't yet shown to my own heart. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. I know that now. And somewhere in that gentle shift from resistance to acceptance, discovered that I wasn't waiting for someone to come and fill the silence. I was learning to sing in it. They say that as you grow older, you grow wiser, but I think it's just that you run out of excuses. I spent most of my life managing things. Managing a family, a budget, a schedule, 100 little fears. And for decades, I lived inside the comfort of what I knew. I told myself I wasn't the adventurous type. I avoided risks with the grace of a tightrope walker. I said no more than I said yes, not out of negativity, but out of habit. But one day, I looked around and realized something. The clock wasn't going to rewind. My joints weren't going to get looser. My calendar wasn't going to fill itself. If I wanted to do anything new, anything at all, I had to say yes before I talked myself out of it. So, I did that, not to bungee jumping or world travel, though those might come one day. I started smaller. I said yes to a pottery class even though I hadn't made anything with my hands since grade school. I said yes to joining a local walking group, even though the idea of making new friends at my age made my stomach flutter. I said yes to trying sushi, yes to singing out loud in the car, yes to dancing alone in the kitchen to 70s music while waiting for the tea kettle to whistle. And you know what? Each yes made me braver, not because they all went smoothly, some didn't. I spilled clay, got blisters, forgot names, fell asleep halfway through a community play I swore I wanted to see, but I laughed, I stretched, I showed up. I began to realize that fear wasn't a stop sign, it was a doorway. And every time I stepped through, I discovered another layer of myself I hadn't met yet. It turns out, you don't stop growing when you hit a certain number on the calendar. You stop growing when you stop being curious. And I wasn't ready to stop, not then, not now, not when life still had surprises up its sleeve. So I kept saying yes, even when I shook, even when I doubted, even when I thought, I'm too old for this. Especially then, because it's never too late to become someone who dares. You don't realize how precious ordinary is until your life slows down enough to notice it. For most of my younger years, I was always on the go, rushing from work to errands to dinner to bed, hoping the weekend would give me just enough space to breathe. Back then, I thought joy had to be earned through exhaustion, that it came only after the checklist was complete, or the trip was planned, or the house was clean. But after 70, the pace changes. And at first, I mourned that. I missed the buzz of a full schedule, the noise of a house filled with busy lives, the urgency that made me feel useful. But what I didn't expect was that with all the rushing gone, I began to see my life more clearly. I began to savor my coffee, not just drink it. I noticed how the light changed in my living room across the day. I smiled at birds I couldn't name. I found myself humming as I folded laundry, or getting lost in the rhythm of chopping vegetables for a stew. There was no applause for these moments, no finish line, no Instagram-worthy highlights. But in their simplicity, there was something honest, something sacred. a sense of presence that I had missed in all my striving. I found joy in the first bite of toast, still hot and buttered, in handwritten letters, in watching rain drip from the edges of leaves, in the weight of a blanket on a quiet afternoon nap. There's a beauty to life that only reveals itself when you're finally still enough to witness it. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You stop chasing the high notes and start hearing the melody in between. That's what falling in love with my life meant. In the end, not grand achievements, not bucket list dreams checked off, just the sweet, steady music of the everyday, playing like a lullaby to my soul. I used to think falling in love with life meant fireworks, some kind of triumphant transformation, a big, cinematic moment where everything suddenly makes sense and all the missing pieces come together. But now, after all I've lived and all I've let go, I know better. Falling in love with life after 70 wasn't a grand finale. It was a quiet return, a coming home to myself. It didn't arrive all at once, and it certainly didn't look the way I expected. It came in bits and pieces. In the mornings I stopped rushing through, in the tears I finally allowed myself to cry, in the friendships I opened my heart to without fear of loss. It came in laughter that surprised me, and in memories that stopped hurting so much. It came when I forgave myself for the things I couldn't undo and thanked myself for the strength I didn't know I had. This love story wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy. It didn't require anyone else's approval or permission. It was simply me choosing to look at my life not as a series of things that had already happened, but as something still unfolding, something worthy, something full of beauty, even if no one else sees it but me. I don't know how many chapters I have left, none of us do. But I know this: I don't want to spend them waiting for something more to make me feel alive. Because I am alive, here, now, and that is enough. If you're watching this, and you're wondering if your best days are behind you, hear me, friend. Life isn't finished with you yet. You're not too late. You're not too old. You're not used up. You're just beginning in a new way. Falling in love with your life again doesn't mean pretending it's perfect. It means seeing it clearly and choosing to stay, choosing to be present, choosing to soften. Choosing to live fully, gently, gratefully, not for anyone else, just for you.